Okay, I have 15 minutes and I'll try to be brief. For some reason, this is the third time when you see, oh my God, why doesn't it, which is the, oh, okay. So this is probably the third time that when you see World of Tanks on this at this seminar. And yes, this is the most research game made in Belarus, probably one of the most highest grossing games made in Belarus ever. And it is also highly problematic, and yet it remains the subject of national pride for some reason. This is the World of Tanks was developed by the initially Belarusian company Wargaming that, of course, moved to Cyprus after some really short operational time as soon as they became successful, more or less. But it actually it has a predecessor. It actually had a predecessor, and the Wargaming studio is a little bit like Rovio in a way. It was founded in Minsk in 1998, and it was struggling for the first 10 years until it released a minor hit, Operation Bagration, which is another game that deals with the history of the Second World War, and it is more connected to Belarus, at least in the geographical sense, because this operation happened also, this military operation happened at the territory of Belarus to a large extent. So the both games are set in Belarus in the Second World War, and they both represent this part of the history that is shared, Soviet shared history, and it is shared between Belarus, Russia, Ukraine, and many other Soviet republics that also had their legacy in this war. However, it became a global hit and it transformed a lot. Now it is like a free-to-play casino with Arnold Schwarzenegger in advertising videos. And at this stage, it definitely requires more research. You can find some of it also on historical memory and the interest in history. But most of this research, at least those that is published in English in respected journals and can be accessed by any of you, those research has not been made by Belarusians. It has been made by international scholars. Interestingly, Wargaming it has difficult relationship with the researchers, so it used to have its own research institute, sociologists who would help to study the audience, and it had a great UX lab that helped also to study the users, but it kind of faded in history because, sometimes researchers say something that the CEO does not like. Researchers should say the things that are the same things that managers think. This is the problem with the wargaming in this regard. However, you can find good quality research. My question, and initially in its earlier stage, this game was actually appealed to the fans of history, but it also appealed to this restorative nostalgia that is mostly the basis for today's totalitarian regimes in Russia and Belarus. And the president also, the bloody illegitimate then president of Belarus, he confirmed that his son was playing these games. So the company had a little bit of leeway, at least while operating in Belarus, also due to reliance on its restorative Soviet nostalgia. Actually, if you look at this slide, they used to co-finance an entertainment park, and it was labeled the Stalin's line, a fictitious war enforcement, fictitious war construction that was kind of rebuilt. It was, historians say that it was not really an important thing, but at least they removed this Stalin from the title of this park now, at least that they corrected. So is this the historical game that we deserved? Is this the historical Belarusian game about the history of Belarus that we deserved? My answer is no, and we could have had it so much better. Even though I don't do historical game research, one day I found myself doing it because I really wanted to write about one alternative way how the history of Belarus could be presented otherwise, and how the history of Belarusian games could be presented otherwise. So I have this little paper published and presented at several conferences, which is about the first popular Belarusian PC game, which is also political. By writing this paper, I was inspired by work of Yaroslav Shvelch. Of course, there are many similarities between this game and early political Czechoslovakian games and Polish political games. So there is actually the most important takeaway from that paper, which is available open access, is that you can easily put this weird artifact from the Belarusian game history into the context of Eastern European game history. It fits really, really well. And these are the features that most of such games have, not just in Belarus, but also in Poland, Czech Republic, and even, as we saw today, maybe even in Slovenia and other countries. So how did I do that paper? It was not easy. It took 5 years. And this is the summary that I made after the seminar at the History of Game conference. I kind of listed all the sources that you can use when you write such a paper. Actually, I added museums, and today I learned that this is also an important source to study Belarusian game history. Again, thanks to Yaroslav, who just mentioned that in Tallinn you can find, like, you don't have, of course, game museums in Belarus, apart from this Stalin's line, I guess. But you can find, it appears, information about Belarusian games and game development in game museums of other countries. So I mostly used archives by retro game enthusiasts and a little bit of talk to game developers whom I actually know, at least through 1 or 2 handshakes, but I couldn't really interview them because Belarus already was an authoritarian state and sociological research was already prohibited. I did not know that. I just went on with that. I did some survey, I did some very mild collection of archival materials, and here is my paper, you can find it. What is different about studying Eastern European games, especially Belarus? Pros, you have living witnesses because the industry is very young. I am older than the Russian game industry. I'm older than Tetris, or maybe as old as Tetris. Pazhitnov, who made Tetris, is 66 and he gives interviews. So you can interview the creator of Tetris if you want to study Tetris. And enthusiasts are probably my age, so they're nostalgic age. They want to remember, they want to be these, like they want to share. So they are really eager to talk, even in Belarus. And also, if you're local, if you're going local, you can access all the important people. They're probably friends of your friends. And yes, these are the good things. And the bad things is, of course, you can't do this research. You're not allowed, and you will go to prison if you do. And so don't do that. But also, another good thing is that, or the bad thing, and to me, it is even worse than the other one, is that researchers are not really interested in bad games. Even in Belarus, game researchers want to study something cool, maybe World of Tanks, but they somehow never get to publish really good quality papers for some reason. I know these reasons, but it's another talk. Also institutional resistance, not lack of support, but active resistance. You will have no funding, no career, maybe no freedom. And finally, a more objective reason why it's so difficult. The economy is mostly happening in the shadows, and it has always been. Even if you study wargaming, you need to acknowledge that they are a Cyprus company for a reason, and of course, piracy. However, even though this all is the reality of historical game research in Belarus, I got the taste of it. So there is also another chapter by me about Russian game history, and here I continue my colleagues from Russia. This is also the lack of interest that can be filled by people like me who study such silly and worthless, according to game journalist, genres as the Russian Quest from the 90s, which was like the most Russian genre ever. It's like adventure games in Russian with very crude humor and not really good as games. But that was the period that was worth studying. Or next time I will do a Ukrainian game, and I will probably start from the first Sherlock Holmes game from Frogwares, because everybody wants to know how did a very primitive game become the, like, how this game has led them to make the masterpieces that they're making right now in this situation of terrible war. And I think I will finish here. Thank you.